Real people, real confessions, the stories you weren't supposed to hear. Welcome to Beyond Reddit Stories. I found out my husband was cheating on our wedding day. And no, this isn't a metaphor. I mean it, literally, hours before I walked down the aisle in a $10,000 dress, surrounded by 200 smiling guests, a photographer, a live band, and a freaking flower arch we spent 6 months planning. I found out. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. And honestly, for a few hours, the morning started just like any perfect wedding day should my best friends laughing, champagne flowing, hair curlers, lipstick, the smell of white roses everywhere. People were calling me the most relaxed bride they'd ever seen. I was smiling, joking, sending last-minute texts to vendors. I felt like I had everything. I felt safe. But here's the thing about perfect pictures. They don't always show the cracks underneath. At exactly 1:14 p.m., while I was getting ready in the bridal suite, my phone died. Dead battery. Typical, right? So I reached for his phone, Daniel's lying on the vanity. I didn't even think, just grabbed it. All I needed was to text the florist and confirm the delivery time. But the second I unlocked it, I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. A message. Not just any message. A message that started a crack I could never tape back together. It was right there on the lock screen last night. It was amazing. I can still taste you. I remember my fingers freezing. The room spun, but only for a second. My brain tried to come up with a logical explanation. Maybe it was old, maybe it was spam, maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But I knew, deep down I knew. You know when something is just too clear, too cruel to be a mistake. That was the moment. So here's the question. If you found out your fiancé cheated on you the night before your wedding, would you still walk down that aisle? I did, but not for the reason you think. And if you're still listening, stay with me, because what happened next shocked even me. I never saw myself as someone who would be in that kind of story. You know the stories you read on Reddit or see in those dramatic TikToks? The ones where the bride finds out something devastating and dramatic, and it all explodes in front of a crowd. That wasn't me. I'm just Emma, born and raised in Boston, oldest of 3 girls, always the one who had it together, the one who made lists, who planned ahead, who went to therapy. I work in PR. I've spent my career cleaning up other people's messes. I never imagined I'd be the one standing in the middle of my own. I met Daniel at a networking event. About 3 years ago. It was one of those awkward, overpriced rooftop things where everyone's pretending they're not trying to impress each other. He was tall, well-dressed, had this charming, effortless way of speaking, not over the top, just confident, safe. He made me laugh that night, and then texted me the next morning saying he hoped I got home safe. I remember thinking, wow, a man who communicates, what a concept. We started dating, and it was like something out of a Nora Ephron movie. Weekend brunches, thoughtful gifts, random flowers sent to my office with notes like, just because. He asked about my parents, remembered my niece's name, fixed my leaky kitchen faucet. He was good, too good. And maybe that should have been my first red flag. But when you've spent your 20s with half-hearted men who ghost you after 2 dates, or can't say I love you without flinching, someone like Daniel feels like salvation. Everyone loved him, my friends, my family, even my dad, who doesn't like anyone. And me, I fell hard. I let myself believe, finally, that I could have the thing I always envied in others' certainty. But you know what no one tells you about fairy tales? Sometimes they move too fast. We were engaged after a year. He proposed during a weekend trip to Vermont, under falling leaves and fairy lights strung across a rented cabin porch. I cried. He cried. It felt right. And yet, there were little moments, quiet ones, a shift in the way he pulled away when I asked about his phone password, the way he traveled for work a bit more often after the engagement, the way he'd snap just slightly when I asked too many questions. Nothing big enough to scream red flag, just whispers, little breezes brushing the back of your neck when you're walking alone at night, the kind you brush off, because love makes you generous, with your doubt, with your boundaries. So I pushed those feelings down. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself I was projecting past relationships onto a good man. After all, we were planning a wedding. The venue was booked, deposits paid. My Pinterest board was real life. This wasn't the time to panic. But what I didn't know, what I refused to see, was that my gut wasn't lying to me. I just chose to lie to myself. The morning of the wedding, I woke up early, too early. I barely slept. Part nerves, part excitement. You know when your body knows something your mind hasn't caught up with yet? That was me. Awake before the sun, staring at the ceiling in a room that wasn't mine. The bridal suite was beautiful. Warm light pouring through tall windows. Flower arrangements already in place. Champagne chilling in a silver bucket. Everyone kept saying, "You're glowing, Emma." I smiled, nodded, laughed at the right jokes. Because that's what you do on your wedding day, you perform. For family, for friends. For the thousands of dollars that went into one single day. The hairstylist was working on my curls when I realized my phone had died overnight. No charger in sight. One of the bridesmaids was already using hers. Daniel's phone was on the vanity, charging. I didn't even think. We've used each other's phones before. We weren't that couple who had secrets. Or so I thought. I picked it up, unlocked it. He never changed the passcode. I opened messages. Just needed to text the florist. That's when I saw it. A text at the top of the screen, unread. "Last night was amazing. I can still taste you." At first, I stared at it like it was a foreign language, like maybe I wasn't reading it right. Maybe it was a joke, a prank, something innocent. But then I tapped it. There were more. A long thread of messages going back weeks. Flirting, photos, voice notes. Inside jokes I didn't understand. And then the worst part, an address. A hotel in the city, booked in his name, the date. The night before our wedding, he hadn't even bothered to delete it. My stomach flipped. Everything inside me went cold, and then hot, and then numb. I felt like I was watching someone else hold that phone, someone else reading those words. The room spun for a moment. Voices around me turned into distant echoes. And then one of my bridesmaids, Leah, my best friend since college, saw my face. She leaned in and whispered, "Em, what's wrong?" I showed her. She froze too. Then came the questions. What are you going to do? Do you want to call off the wedding? Should we confront him? Do you want to tell your parents? But here's the thing, weddings don't stop easily. There's momentum, a machine already in motion. Vendors, schedules, expectations. Canceling would mean explaining, embarrassment, public pain. I didn't have time to think. Only minutes before I was supposed to walk out and meet him at the altar, I texted the woman, yes, the one from the messages. I found her number, and to her credit she responded, fast, at first. She seemed confused, said she didn't know he was getting married, claimed he told her he was single. I believed her. You could hear the shock in her voice. But it didn't matter. Whether she knew or not, he did. Meanwhile, downstairs, Daniel was greeting guests. Smiling, laughing, taking selfies with his groomsmen like nothing had happened. And me, I was upstairs, holding the pieces of the future I thought I had. The hardest part, there was still a part of me that wanted to pretend I hadn't seen anything, to just put the phone down, walk out, say the vows, deal with it later, because admitting the truth now would mean starting over, alone, humiliated. And I'd built so much of my identity around us, around forever. But then Leah said something. She looked me dead in the eyes and whispered, "If you go out there and marry him, you're not just lying to your guests. You're lying to yourself. And I love you too much to let you do that." That was the moment I knew. Something had to change. And I was going to make sure this wedding would be remembered not for what it was supposed to be, but for what it revealed. I wish I could tell you I had a clean, calm plan, that I took a breath, thought it through, and executed some brilliant, empowering mic drop moment. But the truth is, I was spiraling, heart racing, hands shaking, mascara smudging while a makeup artist tried to fix my face, clueless that the bride she was working on had just discovered the man she was about to marry had been inside someone else, less than 24 hours ago. I kept thinking, was it real? Any of it? The proposal, the Sunday mornings, the way he looked at me across the table, the promises. Because when betrayal hits, it doesn't just crack your heart. It erases your past. It forces you to question every memory you once held sacred. And that's a kind of pain no one prepares you for. Leah, my best friend, sat on the floor in her bridesmaid dress, holding my hand like we were kids again. She didn't say much, just kept whispering, "Whatever you want to do, I've got you." I looked around the room, the dress, the flowers, the veil. It was all beautiful, but it wasn't mine anymore. Not really. It belonged to the version of me that trusted him, the version that didn't exist now. At 2:05 p.m., someone knocked on the door. It was the wedding coordinator. "Emma, they're ready. It's time." Leah looked at me. I stood up, took one last look in the mirror, and said, "Let's go." But not for the reason she thought. I walked down the aisle. The music played. The guests stood, phones out, smiles everywhere. My father took my arm, asked, "You okay, baby?" I nodded, lied. Daniel was waiting for me, in his perfect tux, beaming, like nothing happened, like he hadn't ripped my world in half. When our eyes met, something changed. I saw it, a flicker of fear. He knew, somehow. He knew I knew. We reached the altar. The officiant welcomed everyone, made a joke about true love. I didn't laugh. I stood there, clutching my bouquet so tight I thought I'd snap the stems. And then, right before the vows, I interrupted. "Wait." Everyone froze. Even the birds outside stopped. I swear. I turned to the officiant, and I asked if I could say something to him, just a few words. He hesitated, but nodded. I stepped forward, turned to face the crowd, and for the first time that day, I wasn't shaking, my voice was steady, my mind was clear, because sometimes clarity doesn't come in silence, it comes in fire. I said, "Before I marry this man, I think there's something you all deserve to know, something I deserve to say out loud, because today was supposed to be about truth, about love, about promises, and last night, the man I was going to marry spent the night with another woman." Gasps, murmurs. Daniel's face drained of color. I continued. "I found the messages. I saw everything. And I've spoken to her. She didn't even know he was engaged. So don't worry, this isn't revenge. This is revelation." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. "Daniel, you made me think I was crazy for asking questions. You made me believe I was lucky to have you. But today, I realized you were lucky to have me. And you threw it away." I turned to the crowd. "To everyone here, thank you for coming, for loving me, for witnessing what was supposed to be the beginning of a marriage. But instead, today will be the beginning of something else. The moment I chose not to settle, the moment I chose me." Then I handed the bouquet to Leah, took off my heels, and walked barefoot down the aisle. Some people cried, some clapped, some just sat there, mouths open. But me, I was free. I didn't cry. Not that day. Not even that night. I thought I would. I imagined I'd collapse into some dramatic sobbing mess on the floor of a hotel room somewhere. But I didn't. I just breathed. And for the first time in months, maybe years, it felt like mine. I went back to the bridal suite, took off the dress, sat on the edge of the bed and stared out the window as the sun started to set. And I felt not happy, but whole. Broken things can still feel whole, because wholeness isn't about perfection, it's about honesty. And I had finally been honest with myself. In the days that followed, I got messages from friends, guests, even strangers who heard what happened. Some were shocked, some were angry, but so many of them said the same thing: "I wish I had done what you did." And that broke my heart in a different way. Because I realized something. So many of us stay. We stay in relationships, in jobs, in situations that don't honor us because we're afraid of starting over, afraid of what people will say, afraid of the loneliness on the other side of the truth. But what if the real betrayal isn't what they did to us? What if the real betrayal is what we do to ourselves every time we choose silence over truth? I'm not a hero. I'm not brave in some big cinematic way. I was just a girl in a dress, standing at an altar, realizing that loving someone isn't enough if they don't respect you. And choosing to walk away wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was admitting that I almost didn't. So maybe this isn't a story about cheating. Maybe it's a story about courage. About listening to that small, quiet voice inside you, the one that says something's wrong and having the strength to believe it. even when it's inconvenient, even when it's terrifying. And if you've ever been in that moment staring down a truth you didn't want to face, I want you to hear this. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're not too much. You're just finally seeing things clearly. And that is power. So now you've heard my story. Messy, imperfect, raw. And if you're still listening, thank you. Really. I didn't share this for sympathy. I didn't share it to go viral or prove a point. I shared it because maybe someone out there needed to hear it. Maybe you needed to hear it. Maybe you've been sitting on a truth for too long. Maybe you're trying to convince yourself that the small cracks aren't that bad, that you can hold everything together a little longer, that one more chance will fix it. Or maybe you've already walked away and you're still wondering if you did the right thing. If that's you, this is your reminder. You are allowed to choose yourself, even if it hurts, even if it's inconvenient, even if people don't understand, especially then. I know this story might stir up a lot: anger, sadness, judgment, or even memories of something you've been through. So if you're comfortable, share with me. In the comments, I read them, every single one. Tell me, have you ever ignored a red flag because you were scared to lose the dream? Have you ever walked away when no one expected you to? Or do you wish you had? Let this be a space where honesty lives, where we don't shame ourselves for staying too long or for leaving too late, where we just tell the truth. And if this story made you feel something, anything, hit that like button. If it reminded you of someone, send it to them. And if you want to hear more stories like this, real, complicated, human, subscribe to the channel. We don't do clickbait here. We do life, the real kind. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is tell the story we were once too scared to speak out loud. And now this one's mine. Thanks for being here.